Welcome back to the channel. Is it comic book legend or comic book icon, Mark Millar, now?
I'm comfortable with legend. Legend's
comic book legend, Mark Millar.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Well, very nice. Glad to have you back on the channel. Obviously, we've got some stuff to talk about today, but we do need to talk about Jim Shooter, the EIC, very influential EIC at Marvel Comics, overseeing probably like 5 of the 10 best runs in the history of comic books at one time. The Simonson Thor, you got Claremont's Uncanny X-Men, you've got Daredevil from Frank Miller, John Byrne's Fantastic Four. So many awesome things happened under Jim Shooter, and we lost him this week.
It's crazy. I woke up this morning and saw that Shooter had died. And Shooter's a funny one for me because I only knew him by reputation, which is quite unusual in comics. Comics is a tiny, tiny fishbowl, and we all know each other very quickly, you know. But there's a few guys that sort of just remain sort of legendary. You know, the guys who precede us, generally you maybe don't get to meet, but but Shooter wasn't that old, you know. I mean, he was running Marvel when he was 26, which was crazy. He sold his first script when he was 13 or 14 to Mark Wiesinger, a Superman book. So for me, he was actually quite inspirational for me when I was a kid, not just because he was really good, but I remember when I was 13 sending a submission to Julie Swartz, because when he was 13, he sent one to Mark Wiesinger. And it just felt, you know, when one fish makes it out onto dry lands, then the other fish think that's interesting, and they all try and, you know, sort of crawl out as well. And I think Jim Shooter was just one of those guys who inspired other teenage kids to kind of give it a shot. Plus, he was awesome. I mean, his Legion of Superheroes was awesome. Secret Wars was awesome. You know, the stuff he was doing as a comic book writer, his random issues of Superman that he did, I loved, like Superman 200. He created the Parasite and everything. But then, I mean, the big thing, of course, is coming into Marvel. But when I was growing up, when I was sort of coming of age as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, you know, when a lot of people become comic obsessives at that point, you know, that's your comic book puberty, you know, and you're buying all the fanzines you can get your hands on and everything. And I remember he was such a reviled character in a lot of ways, you know. They were really, he was very controversial, you know, and I could never reconcile it with, well, I didn't really quite know what was going on, because all I knew was he was overseeing the best period of Marvel ever. So I'm unusually blind to the behind the scenes stuff. I don't know what made him so controversial. I'm not quite sure what was happening at the time, but I just know as a fan that Marvel had never been better since the first 50 issues of Fantastic Four, probably, you know, like, I mean, that 80s period, never mind Marvel, the industry in general, I mean, that's a high watermark for the industry. You know?
Yeah, people only think of him a lot of times as an EIC, but he wrote possibly the greatest adventure story of all time, the Korvac saga, right?
I haven't read that. What's that? With the Korvac saga?
You've never read the Korvac saga?
No.
That's a good one. That was, you know, obviously it's back in the 70s or whatever, but there's this big celestial guy named Korvac. He comes down to Earth and he starts changing everything, and the Avengers try to stop him. And it turns out maybe he's not the bad guy in the end.
Crazy. I've never read his Avengers run. I mean, I think I was reading Marvel more in the 80s, you know, so I kind of missed a lot of that 70s stuff. So I'll check it out.
Definitely, if you want a classic Jim Shooter.
I mean, you put it in perspective, though, you know, like, I mean, 26 when he's running Marvel. I mean, that's like 5 years younger than Justin Bieber. And he's running Marvel, and he's taking over from Archie Goodwin, you know, who's a legend and everything, you know. So, yeah, crazy. I mean, there's some guys who are just like totemic in the industry, isn't there? And Shooter was just one of those guys. Like, the industry feels smaller without people like Jim Shooter around.
Yeah, just on like a personal note, you know, he created my favorite superhero, Exo Manowar. Obviously, when he started Valiant Comics and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
One of my kids is named after Exo Manowar.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
Yeah. There's a kid out there named XO. No, it's actually Eric, but you get what I'm saying. But it's kind of weird, you know. His legacy will, at a minimum, live on through one of my boys.
That's amazing, you know. And the nice thing about having worked in any kind of art medium, you know, is that your life does live on a little bit. You know, people remember you because whether it's in 50 years' time in a back issue box or something like that, somebody experiences a thought that was in your head. So I guess you achieve immortality in a way through this stuff.
But there was definitely an outpouring of grief. You know, you just see it on your Twitter timeline where everyone's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Jim Shooter's gone. And you start seeing all the pros go out there and how many people he had helped out or talked to or mentored over the years. And while he certainly had a surly reputation, you know, John Byrne, I believe specifically left Marvel, went to DC because of him. Jerry Conway left around the same time. But it sounded like he was a very giving person. He just demanded excellence.
Yeah, like I say, he's one of the few people who I didn't have a relationship with, because comics, like I say, almost everyone you meet very quickly. But Jim was always quite an elusive figure, I tried to get him on my podcast over the last year, and I understand he was sick. I didn't realize how sick, so through a third party, I dropped him some lines saying that, would you please come on the podcast? Because, I had Jeanette Kahn, and, the idea of somebody of that stature, who was such a leader in the industry when I was breaking into it, would be amazing. And I'm sure he had some great stories. But yeah, one of my great regrets that I never got to talk to him, because he'd have been an interesting guy to know.
Absolutely. A lot to learn from somebody that has achieved that much. And certainly at age 26, that's crazy. Absolute wonderkin. And he'll definitely be missed. Yeah,
it's a funny one, isn't it? Because he peaked so young, I can't believe he was out of Marvel at 35. I only read that this morning when I saw one of the obituaries, because he seemed like an adult to me because I was a kid, like the idea that he's out of Marvel at 35 is insane,
He came this close to buying Marvel.
Yeah.
When Toy World
ended up getting revenge, isn't it? There's something awesome about that, like going away, there's something Shakespearean about it, isn't it? You ride back as the king and take over, so that would have been interesting.
Almost happened, but definitely rest in peace. What's that?
What year was it you tried to buy it?
Oh, it was when the Toy Biz Marvel went bankrupt and all the stuff that was going on. He had a group together and they put their bid together. And it looked like they were going to win for a minute, but ended up going to Ike Perlmutter.
Right. Yeah. That would have been fascinating. That's one of those great historical what ifs, isn't it? Like if Jim Shooter had bought Marvel. Yeah.
Might be a whole different industry.
In saying that, the 2000s were great as well. Ike, I know Ike's a controversial figure too, but my dealings with Ike, I always really liked him. I always got on great with him. And he was very good to me, So, I don't know. One thing you realize as you get older is, nobody's all bad, and industry villains and things like that crop up. You'll hear some story that melts your heart about them as well. Like I say, Ike was always great to me. I hear so many nice things about Shooter now, that I didn't hear when I was growing up. For me, though, he was just a name in the corner of a comic that I was really enjoying. It was that period when Frank Miller's doing Daredevil and everything, and he's just one of those names you see along the bottom, and you think, okay, it's almost a little stamp of quality, isn't it, that Shooter era?
Yeah, it's weird when you grow up and maybe the people that you thought were bad, they're not quite as bad as you thought. The people that you thought were perfect maybe weren't quite as perfect. When you realize maybe Dad isn't a superhero. Maybe he's just a normal guy.
Well, there's also another thing as well, which is sometimes what shocks me is that the people who have the best reputations are very often the people with the best PR, and the people who you think of as a villain, actually, when you get to know them, are the hero of that story. Especially now, it's quite easy to manage your reputation, and people have personas and everything, but we see it, we see a fall from grace for a lot of people. But yeah, I think that's been the biggest shock for me. I find it with actors and things as well. The guys who I think are going to be absolute sweethearts turn out to be absolute monsters behind the scenes, you see. And also the other way around as well, where the guys you've always been told are bad turn out to be gracious and really nice.
Very nice. I guess we should start talking about some comic books here, because you've got a big comic book out there. It's on Kickstarter right now. I think there's just a little over a week left for Psychic Sam. You and John Romita Jr. getting back together. You've done so much work together with, Wolverine, Kick-Ass, Hit Girl, all that kind of stuff. And this is your first crowdfunding book.
It is. It's one of those things I'd wanted to do for ages, because a lot of my friends were doing it a couple of years ago, but I couldn't get a carve out then, I had a 12-week carve out from my contract to do something, to do either a Marvel book or a DC book. And then the idea came to me, like, okay, why not give a crowdfunding a try and just see what happens? Because it's such an interesting experiment. It's such an interesting idea that to have nobody between the creative team and the reader, which is awesome. You literally just send it to their house. And I kind of love the idea of that. I thought, I'll give it a try, see what happens, And working with Johnny again, Johnny and I talked about doing something. We were saying, we'll wait for the right project. And this was the right project. Like, if you do something that's kind of violent, street level, kind of funny, dark and everything, like, getting Johnny's like getting Martin Scorsese to direct your movie. He's the best there is at that kind of stuff.
So what is it, like 30 years you guys have been working together?
We started working together in 2004, I think, so 21 years ago. We did
21.
Wolverine. We did Wolverine round about then, and we really got on. You know, Johnny and I just became fast friends. And also, it's a funny thing because the synergy that comes with a comic book creative team kind of can't always be anticipated. You know, sometimes you get an amazing artist and you put them together with an amazing writer, and the chemistry is not quite right, you know. But then you get those teams that it just works, like Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. You put them together and sort of magic happens, you know. And I found that, you know, working with Brian Hitch, working with Frank Whiteley, there's just some guys who can like make you, it's not even that they raise your game, they raise the quality of what you've written. Even, you know, your story could be exactly the same, but they find something in it that they can take it to the next level. And Johnny's like that with me, you know, like every page I get back from Johnny is better than it was in my head, and Psychic Sam's no exception. I phoned him up and I gave him this sort of 2-line pitch of what it was, and he was like, I'm in, you know, and that was it. And he started drawing a week later.
Yeah, I just had him on the channel recently. He was a very friendly guy. Really liked talking to John, obviously a comic book legend in his own right.
And, you know, what a beast as well. I don't know if you've met Johnny in real life, but, you know, Johnny's what? I read my first Johnny Romita comic when I was 7 years old, right? And I'm a middle-aged man, you know? So Johnny's been around for a while, but he still does 2 hours weights every morning, you know, and he does, I think he does jiu-jitsu now. He's doing jiu-jitsu like 4 nights a week or something like that. So he's like comics' deadliest man, you know, and I think that's what's kept him young in terms of what he draws as well, because I think his body is in such a kind of young state that it's kept his brain young too. You know, he's got, who stays at the top of the industry? You've drawn top 5 books for 40 years, you know, like nobody. Johnny's an absolute exception.
Absolutely. You guys are what? I think 1,400 backers. You're over that. You're closing in on 90,000. How do you think it's going so far? Has this been a learning experience? Is it everything you thought it could be?
Yeah, I mean, I think we put something like 30 grand or something as our target or whatever, and it looks like we'll maybe crack 100, which is crazy. You know, like we're in the final 8 days, and if we get 100 grand, we'll be absolutely delighted. You know, that's great. But it's funny because, you know, when you do a comic book that goes out into comic stores, you can roughly figure it out when you see who the artist is, when you see who the writer is, who the character is, or a new character. You can very broadly work out, to usually within a couple of thousand sales, how it's going to do. But Kickstarter is a whole new territory, so we had no idea. And it's been a fun thing, you know, after doing this job since I was 19, you know, it's quite fun trying something a little different. But if we hit 100 grand next week, I'll be absolutely delighted.
And this isn't the end of the road. You're planning to crowdfund 2 other volumes of this, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've already written them. I wrote them in my 12 weeks out last year at the end of the year. So there's 3 volumes. I've written my side of it. Johnny's just started volume 2. Klaus and Bill Crabtree, Klaus Janson, Bill Crabtree are just finishing off volume 1. So our plan is 3 volumes, and now, you know, I did the movie deal January or February once I'd finished, and we're putting the movie together now at the same time. So it's quite exciting, you know. And I was just saying, like, I mean, I know people are sniffy about speculators and everything, but I think great, you know, awesome. If more people are buying your book, all the better, you know. But I think from a speculator point of view, it's quite fun because, I don't know, we get 1,600 backers maybe or something. Then that means there's literally, you know, 1,200 issues of this comic or something when a movie comes out, and we're going to have the first editions here, you know. So we haven't seen that yet. I don't think we've seen a crowdfunded thing become a movie yet. So those very limited numbers that you sell in crowdfunding will create scarcity, which I think is really interesting. Now, I'm curious what happens now with that. So that's exciting. I think we are the first ever crowdfunded comic to become a movie, I think.
That's really cool stuff. So you're naming off the creative team, and I hadn't, you know, I knew it, but I wasn't really thinking about it. Like when I started my channel 7 years ago, crowdfunding was kind of picking up steam and it was becoming a bigger thing. But I never would have imagined you would get like that many Hall of Famers on one team, and they would do a crowdfunding book rather than something for Marvel or DC or Millar World or something like that. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, financially, it's actually better doing crowdfunding. It actually is better than going through traditional channels. But the beauty is, I see it as just one of many arrows you can have. You know, it's like you've got crowdfunding. You've got Sean Murphy's actually developed a really great strategy for this for creators. which is you've got crowdfunding, you've got comic stores, you've got bookstores, you've got digital, and you get your foreign editions. I mean, this is dynamite, like compared to back in the day when you just basically had your, monthly comic. So this can run and run. And then if you have your movie on top of that, you multiply all the other stuff. So from a pro point of view, as a comic pro, it's great, But I like the idea of the first wave of it being the crowdfunding. I think that's great because you're getting to the people who are most into it. It's literally been put through their letterbox way ahead of everybody else.
Is this the quickest any of your projects have gone into production or been stamped for production for a movie?
Do you know what? I've actually been kind of weirdly lucky. I'll give you some examples. Like December 2003, Wanted came out. And I think it was August or something, 2003, when the solicit went up, I got a call from Universal Pictures. And I thought it was a joke, like genuinely, like I'd never sold a movie or didn't even know any movie people or anything, and somebody had got a hold of my number and they called me up and they said, we'd like to I didn't even know what option meant, right? And they said, we'd like to option Wanted. And I was like, what? And I genuinely thought it was a pal playing a prank on me, and then 2004, the script got written. 2005, it got rewritten. 2006, it got rewritten again. 2007, the movie went into production, and then it came out 2008. So that was pretty fast. Spider-Man was about 40 years. Superman was about 40 years going to the big screen, and we did it in about 4, which is crazy, But then Kick-Ass was even faster.
It was like 2 years.
It was crazy. I started writing that in 2000. I actually wrote issue 6 because I was going to originally do a Hit Girl thing. I wrote issue 6 in 2006. Then 2007, I wrote the main comic and integrated it all. 2008, I brought it out, and we were filming in September 2008, which is insane, And it finished filming around about Christmas time, and it was ready 2009, but we actually held it back, and we held it back into the beginning of 2010. We just thought it was a better window for it to come out because although it was a superhero movie, what people don't realize with Kick-Ass is it only cost 28 million. It was a really low budget film, So we just thought February's a better slot than summer when you're up against all the big kind of Iron Man type movies and everything. So that was fast as well. Comic came out 2008, movie comes out 2010. It's pretty good. We'll probably be about the same with this one. I think we'll hopefully have this shooting in the spring, out the following summer possibly.
So is this the one with the director that you've been talking about, or is this a different production?
This is, I think you and I have talked privately. I think I've told you who the director is for this. We haven't gone public yet, but the director here is somebody who's a friend of mine, and he's amazing. He's really, really great. And I think everybody will be wild when they hear who it is. What's also exciting is the director, who will hopefully announce in the next few weeks. He on Sunday met the actor who we want to play the lead, to play Psychic Sam himself, and he loved it. So can we do a deal? Hopefully. The guy we want, he's literally the first guy we've gone to, is literally one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. So if he does it, it'll be massive. So the director is a good friend of his, and he's worked with him twice already, and that's why he went to him instead of us going to him. So he met him and gave him the pitch, and the idea is I
know what you're talking about now.
You do? Yeah.
I think I figured it out.
I'll DM you later.
Cool.
So that's crazy. I mean, if that works out as we hope, then this we don't even have to think about it. We can just sit back and this thing will blow up. But it's a good concept. The simple idea is, what if you were just a regular Joe, a blue collar truck driver, just a normal person, and you get psychic flashes, somebody whispering in your ear, telling you about a murder that's going to happen tomorrow, and you don't know who's going to be murdered, but you know who's going to commit it, and their address is whispered in your ear too. Do you go round to their house and try and stop them from killing someone? And when you ignore it, that person kills an innocent person. So the bodies start piling up when he's ignoring it at first. He can't call the cops. He tries it, and they're like, "You're insane. You think it's going to be a murder tomorrow." Then he becomes a suspect because a murder really does happen.
He has the details, yeah.
So he has to go around to the. He eventually sees a crime so terrible happening to a little kid, a little boy, that he has to get a baseball bat and go around and take this guy down, break the guy's legs. But it all goes wrong, and that's the beginning of the story. He heads round to this guy's house, and holy cow, where it goes from there is insane.
Well, that's perfect for Johnny Romita Jr. He likes violence.
It's the Punisher meets, Minority Report, like it's kind of, Johnny's run with Chuck Dixon on the Punisher Warzone back in the 90s. It's one of my favorite comic runs ever. So to have him and Klaus and Bell doing, a street level crime comic like this, great, But the little sidekick dimension stops it from being a straight up rip off of Frank Castle, because it's pretty fun. Like the reason for the sidekick thing is really fun, where this goes. So yeah, I think people are going to like it.
Well, it's definitely a different call to action for the hero to respond to.
And I like, those John Carpenter heroes, like Jack Burton type of thing, where it's just a regular guy, and everybody, I think that's probably something I do a lot in my work, like Wesley Gibson in Wanted was just a regular guy who worked in an office. Eggsy in Kingsman was just this kid that's dropped out of everything, just doesn't have a job and all that, but he's a pretty normal person. Dave Lazuski's a comic book fan like we are in Kick-Ass. So I kind of like stories about regular people being put in extraordinary situations and seeing how they deal with it,
Very cool stuff. And hopefully, I believe you'll definitely go over 100,000, and it's been wildly successful thus far. Is this in the Millar World universe?
No, it's a separate thing. We've even created a separate company because Millarworld is owned by Netflix. They own it forever, because a lot of people think I did a deal or something, like a first look deal, but it was like Disney buying Marvel. So they came in and they bought us out, they bought the company out. I took a separate job as an executive at Netflix, but it's owned by Netflix entirely. So this 12-week window I had, I was so ahead. I was like, the boy in the class who's done all his homework kind of thing. I was like that. I was 12 weeks ahead. And I was like, okay, I'll take this time out and do something at Marvel or DC. And as you know, you and I talked privately, the Marvel project I really wanted to do was just really difficult to organize behind the scenes. The Marvel guys wanted to do it, but it involved other departments within Disney. So it's going to take a little bit more work. I'm still going to do that at some point, but it's going to involve going a little higher up the food chain to try and make this happen. The DC project, I had a great Superman idea, but I thought Superman's public domain in 8.5 years' time, like I might just hang on and own this idea. So I'm holding that off for the year 2034.
No, I think most people know that you're an enormous movie buff. Like you love movies, and you've been talking a lot on social media about how good the movies are right now. Like, how good has it been thus far in early 2025? Are you just hitting a movie a week? Well,
it's funny you say that because the first quarter of this year, I was like, this is terrible. Like, everything that was coming out was pure junk, and that's the way it's felt since about 2019. Really, there's been almost nothing. COVID's a big part of that. Also, at the same time, a lot of weird decisions were made in Hollywood, and bad movies were getting made, and bad stuff was getting greenlit. But I don't know. It's kind of like, movies take about 4 years to get made, they're never really done in under 3. So decisions that were made in 2022 are only coming to fruition now. So in 2022, everybody was like, we need to change the kind of movies we're making because people hate them, and Hollywood started to turn around. But because of pre-production time, production time, and post-production time, you're only seeing the fruits of those labors in summer 2025. Like Elio is the last bad movie to come out, I think, and all the other stuff is just looking awesome just now, like Top Gun Maverick changed a lot of people. I think the studios were like, oh, you want these movies to be cool? You want them to be exciting and all that, and that kind of completely changed the landscape almost overnight. And everybody was like, let's green light stuff with cool guys doing cool stuff. And suddenly we've got F1, we've got 28 years later, we've got, Superman in a couple of weeks' time. Jurassic World, I think, looks pretty cool. I know that these movies vary in their quality, but I'm going to see literally something every week just now, and I'm really enjoying it all too.
I got to go see Mission Impossible Final Reckoning.
What do you think?
When I was on vacation back in the States, I took my oldest son with me. When we were done, he's like, that's the best movie I've ever seen in my life.
Had he seen all the other?
He's only 10, but
had he seen all the other?
He'd never seen a Mission Impossible movie until he got there.
He must have been completely baffled. Was he not baffled by it? If he had,
I think he was just blown away by all the effects and everything that was going on.
My pal took his dad to see Avengers Endgame, and it was the first Marvel movie he'd ever seen. Right, wow. So Marvel's got some pretty damn complex movie continuity, but even by the time Endgame came along and TV shows and everything, you literally have to watch about 60 hours worth of material to understand Avengers Endgame. And my pal took his dad, and his dad was watching it and all that, and he was like, Dad's going to be completely baffled. I mean, it's even part 2 of this story, you know, he hadn't seen Infinity War, you know, and he said to his dad, what did you think? His dad was like, yeah, it was good. It's all right. You know, so he was fine. He just accepted it as a movie. He didn't care that he didn't know how it all tied in together. You know?
But there's plenty of exposition at the beginning of that Mission Impossible movie that basically catches you up to wherever they are. Yeah, but like the one dude from the first movie that appears in that one for the like the redemption arc,
that's hilarious.
That went right over his head. No idea.
Oh right, of course, yeah. But that was a cool move actually. I really liked that. I thought that was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was really cool. We saw that in Lilo and Stitch.
Well, Lilo and Stitch. I wouldn't say I loved it, but what I did love is, you know, when you have children, like my youngest kid is 11, and even though she's 11, she likes things really that when you're 8 you'll like as well, you know, and she loved Lilo and Stitch so much. My other children liked it, but she loved it. And you know, you can sometimes enjoy something vicariously through your children.
Absolutely.
You know, you're like, yeah, I'm absorbing the joy they're getting out of this, you know, so it's worth my money for the ticket, you know?
Yeah, my kids are all between the ages of 4 and 10.
Right.
And like when it looks like Stitch is in trouble and he might not make it, the 4-year-old was screaming, no, like in the theater.
My wife was crying, right? And it's like, my wife's like a really educated woman, right? So it's funny, she's so much more sophisticated than I am. And, you know, she went to a great school and everything. Her book's by the side of the bed. You know, I've always got like Jack Kirby's Hulk or something at the side of the bed, you know. Her side of the bed is all highbrow books. And she gets so caught up in Lilo and Stitch. I looked around at one point because I thought I saw her shoulders moving. And she was, when these underwater, you know, the underwater scene.
Exactly, yes.
And it's such a cool, I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but that running scene underwater is pretty damn cool, you know. But my wife was in floods. I was like, bloody hell, you know.
Yeah, we're like consoling the kids, like he's gonna be fine. Yeah. It's okay.
What a downer it would have been if they'd killed Stitch. I mean, that would have been a downer. You know? So
worst dad ever.
She thought for a minute this is going to happen.
But that was my 4-year-old's first movie ever that he's ever been to, at least in the theater. So.
Oh really? Yeah.
That'll be a memorable one.
And so How to Train Your Dragon. Take them to see How to Train Your Dragon. It's awesome. It's a 10 out of 10 movie. I loved it.
What did you think of F1? I know you said you were going to see the Brad Pitt F1.
Absolutely loved it. And I'm not into racing. You know, a lot of my friends are really big in F1. One of my best friends, his dad, used to be one of the guys who ran Formula One, right? So, I mean, a lot of my pals are racing obsessives. And so I'm not especially into it. You know, I like it well enough. So I was like, am I going to, you know, it's 2 hours, 36 minutes is a long time in the theater, you know? But I absolutely loved it. I came out of it buzzing. Absolutely buzzing. And the story is so crazy. It's so ridiculous and everything, but just fun. Like Top Gun. I mean, it's Top Gun on wheels, isn't it?
Man, that sounds like Days of Thunder. Remember that one?
Yes.
Top Gun and NASCAR.
But Joe Kosinski's actually, he's hitting home run after home run, you know, and he's building some amazing I mean, Top Gun 3 is his next one, you know, so. All these movies are making a fortune.
They're remaking The Running Man.
I'm excited about that. Like, I'm friendly with Glenn Powell, who's the lead. Edgar Wright's pal of mine who is directing, and Michael Bacall I've worked with, who's a fantastic writer. He's done the screenplay, and they shot it in Glasgow, my home city. They shot nearly the whole movie in Glasgow, and everybody in Glasgow is always really pleased, right? We always kind of hear, "Oh my God, they're shooting a big Hollywood movie in our little Scottish city and everything," you know. And then we find out it's always a nightmare future dystopia. We're like, what?
But the track record of Schwarzenegger remakes is not good. We've had Total Recall and Conan the Barbarian, and they were both awful.
Do you know, I didn't watch Conan, but I saw a clip of it that looked pretty cool. You know, I think it might be the opening sequence where he's got the thing in his mouth. I can't remember. He puts an egg in his mouth or something, and he kills all these guys and doesn't break the egg in his mouth. And I thought, it's kind of cool. I've always meant to check that movie out. Is it not great? No.
And I'm somebody that might have named another one of his kids after Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a pretty big fan of Conan. That movie did not do it.
You know what is good though? The Jim Zub comic.
Oh, the Jim Zub's amazing.
It's a great comic. I love it. I think it's the best Conan easily since Roy Thomas. Easily, you know, and John Buscema. It's great.
Yeah, a lot of the great stuff they did at Dark Horse when they had it were adaptations of the Robert E. Howard stuff. So you didn't get a lot of really awesome like new stuff when Dark Horse had it.
Yeah.
And he's doing new stuff that feels totally inspired by Robert E. Howard. So it's super exciting. It's a great time to be a Conan fan.
It is. We've talked about this before, but it's lovely just seeing like movies just turned a corner about 2 months ago. After 6 years of not being that excited about the cinema, I'm going every week again. I used to go every week until 2019, and I'm going every week again, which I love. And I feel comics is kind of going the same way. Like your channel's been great for that, because you champion the good stuff. And I sometimes find stuff through you, like I'd never heard of Jeremy Adams. And then I saw you talking about him all the time, and I was like, I've got to check this guy out. And I loved it. He's a great guy. I really like him as a person. But he's a great writer. Really, and his Green Lantern run's great. His Aquaman's great. I haven't checked out his Flash Gordon, but I know you love it.
Oh, you'd love that too, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of suddenly good stuff again. After years of really not really reading anything, I dropped off to pretty much nothing, which for me is unthinkable. I mean, if you look at my room, it's like the 40-year-old virgin in here. I love this stuff. I live and breathe it, and I just had nothing to read for ages. So it's great having some cool stuff again. Like Martian Manhunter. I mean, who would have guessed that Martian Manhunter would be a top 10 book? I love it. Dennis Camp's doing a great job on that. Like Ultimate Spider-Man. I know you've been a big champion of Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man. Awesome as well.
Man, so we've got like a big Superman movie.
I cannot wait.
You've lived through 2 of these already. You had the Christopher Reeve Superman, you had the Man of Steel, and now we're getting the James Gunn version.
And Brandon Routh as well, the Bryan Singer one.
Oh, yes, the Superman Returns. Yeah. What are you thinking? I feel like the more they show me, the more I'm getting hesitant. Like, I'm not hesitant. I'm going to go see it, but I'm going, maybe they got that part wrong.
I totally trust the movie. I think the marketing campaign hasn't been great. Like, I kind of like. I don't need the actors to do these little skits and things like that. Like, I don't need all that stuff. You're like, I'm just
trailers and get out. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Less is more, and I think these actors are so good and so likable, and James is brilliant. I don't know if it's like Warner Brothers marketing team or something, but we're seeing too much of them doing the Princess Diaries and all that sort of stuff. We don't need the SNL kind of skits. This is a Superman movie from James Gunn with a great cast. That's enough. That's enough for me, So, I mean, I know everybody's nervous. I'm weirdly not nervous about it. I'm genuinely just so excited because technology has caught up with Silver Age Superman. Like, you could never have made, at the time of Christopher Reeve, a Superman movie with, Superman robots and crypto and all that stuff and do it convincingly, and dragons fighting Superman in the street and everything. It'd look terrible. Superman, they had a very different approach. The big thing that Richard Donner talked about was verisimilitude, to make something as realistic as it possibly can be and make it as close to the real world. So Superman is, in the first movie in particular, he's an extraordinary figure in a very ordinary environment. Everything around Superman's real, so he's the weird thing in the middle of it all. But James has done the opposite approach. James has basically taken a camera into the DC universe, but taking it in 1965 or something, so you're right into Silver Age Superman. It's the Fortress of Solitude, it's crypto, it's his cousin Supergirl, it's Superman robots. And it's glorious. As a guy who grew up with that stuff, I've waited my whole life to see that version of Superman. And now it's here. And I only have to pay $15 or whatever, to go and see it. They spend $300 million. I spend $15. That's a pretty damn good deal.
Well, you bring the wife and the kids and you get snacks. It's $100, but
that's true. Although you can do what my friend did. Like, this is so awful. One of my pals in 2013 for Father's Day, Man of Steel came out around about the time of Father's Day, and his family said to him, "What would you like?" And he said, "I'd like 2 seats in the cinema so I can lie my legs across it, and I just want to go on my own so nobody annoys me while I'm watching the film." And I was like, that's the most Scottish Father's Day thing you can imagine. I just want to lie back and enjoy the movie without you guys talking to me.
I get that every year. My wife's like, "What do you want to do for Father's Day?" It's like, I don't know. I'll grill. What do you want to do for Father's Day? This isn't important. It's not Mother's Day. What are you talking about?
So yeah. I mean, I see so many of my friends saying, "Oh, I don't like that line. I don't like his expression and this and everything." But I'm like, just wait and see. Watch the movie. I think this is going to be a good one.
I think it's going to blow up and do very, very well. But I love the scene where he obviously brings the cape over and he protects the lady from the explosion. Cool. But I like the scene even better where you see the building collapsing.
Yeah,
the lady's in her car and then she looks up and like Superman is holding up the building. Oh, that is straight out of a comic book.
And also Clark Kent, there's so many people who've never read the comics, I think, having opinions on it. But somebody who's read Superman since I learned to read when I was pretty young. I was like 3 or 4 or something. So, Superman comics were like some of the first things that I was reading. And so I've been with the character as far back as my memory goes. Human memory only goes back to about 5, really, and then it's spotty before that. So I can't remember not reading Superman. It's really weird. I've got little drawings of Superman that predate my own memory, and so I know the character well. And I love I love this way that he's playing Clark Kent, which is this goofball. This Clark Kent should always be the last guy in Metropolis who you think is Superman, because he's like, the guy in the office that everyone's like, that guy's a little strange, although if you have cool Clark Kent, it's like, okay, this guy who looks like Superman is probably Superman, So I like.
So John Byrne's Man of Steel pissed you off.
I remember at the time just thinking, you're missing the point of Clark Kent, because the people who get it wrong think about it like the Marvel way. And I love John Byrne, right? But I do think his take on that was wrong, because for me, what makes Marvel is that the characters are based around their secret identities. So Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Peter Parker is the real guy, and he puts on a mask and he becomes Spider-Man. Captain America is probably the only character who Captain America is the real him. Steve Rogers isn't an icon. Captain America is a global brand as himself. He represents an ideal more than a person could be. But everybody else, and maybe Thor, I guess, as well. But everybody else is very human at Marvel. Whereas what's interesting with DC is they're almost like a pantheon of gods, really, aren't they? Like they're supernatural beings, to the point where they even correlate with Greek and Roman myth a lot of the time. And what's fascinating, I think, about Superman is he is the reverse Marvel character. He's somebody who's a god who dresses up as a man. So the Christ-like stuff there is so fascinating. The idea that he looks at the human race and he puts on a pair of glasses to mix with everyone, and he slightly hunches his shoulders and he just wants to hang out with people because he's this lonely god who's somehow ended up on Earth with these other people. And I think to miss that is such a huge mistake. So I love that James Gunn's brought that back. And Corin Sweat, one of the things, he looks great as Superman, but this is a Juilliard-trained actor like Christopher Reeve, and I think he's just brought this level of depth and complexity that, as far as I can see, to the character, that he's just nailing it. I love it.
So you'll be there first day.
I've already booked my tickets. I booked my tickets. And then I found out my niece and her husband are coming down to stay with us that night, and they want to go, so I'm going to see it twice in the first day.
There's another big movie coming out, superhero movie this summer. We got Fantastic Four First Steps.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think those trailers look amazing. I can't believe, it feels like they directly captured the Stan and Jack Fantastic Four, feel and tone. That thing looks like he directly was drawn by Jack Kirby.
Yeah. It's weird because Marvel, I think since 2019, Marvel's hit rate has been staggeringly low. And for the 20 years prior to that, it was staggeringly high, So you saw the Marvel logo and you thought, this is going to be good. We're really excited. But we've been punched in the face so many times over the last 5 or 6 years that everybody's a little, they're kind of wary, And I think if we'd seen these trailers in 2017, we'd be losing our minds. We'd be like, this is going to be fantastic, a retro 60s Fantastic Four with, with the Mole Man, Galactus done right, all this stuff. We'd be loving it. But because we're a little bit punchy after 6 years of not very good Marvel stuff, we're a little nervous. And I still am nervous, that I'll be there first day, but I'm nervous. I'm Pedro Pascal's a little bit annoying, It's
an odd choice.
It's an odd choice, but... it could go either way. The guy who's directed it's never directed a movie before. which is incredible, considering this cost upwards of $200 million. So I mean, what
it's got that monster on the cover of Fantastic Four #1. It looks like it's right out of the
I know. So he's an amazing visual stylist. I mean, I didn't watch the WandaVision show. I couldn't get into it, but but it looked very visually interesting. So it's going to look great visually, but if the script's good, I don't know. If the script's good, then we've got maybe something special as well.
Does the Shala Ball Silver Surfer bother you?
I just think it would have been so easy to just do Silver Surfer. I sent the trailer to my brother. I've got 4 brothers, and I sent it to one of my brothers who really likes comics from his childhood. He reads my stuff occasionally. He reads things like Watchmen, Dark Knight when it comes out. That kind of stuff. And I sent him the trailer, and he's a big Fantastic Four fan from his childhood. And he was like, "Hang on, what's wrong with the Silver Surfer? This is weird," So that was his only thing he sent me back in an email. But I think Julie Garner, though, I genuinely think I saw it in a movie she had called Apartment 7A a few months ago, which is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. She's phenomenal. She's so good. But I don't know why they didn't just make her Shalabal and, do the Silver Surfer properly, But, it's probably a bit of a kind of, a decision that was made 4 years ago or something like that,
She might be the Silver Surfer in a multiverse, and they have to sneak into hours where the Silver Surfer is Norrin Red.
I've got a feeling that's exactly what's going to happen, because obviously this is a multiversal story. This isn't our Fantastic Four or our world. So I do suspect everyone except Doom and the Fantastic Four get killed, and the Fantastic Four come to Earth. And there'll be a different Norrin Rad here. It's a little convoluted, but we'll see. Fingers crossed. I feel as if what's interesting is when Marvel used to come to San Diego, you would see those boards on the screen, and it was like the next 20 projects they're doing. And right now we're only seeing this 2 Avengers movie, and Sony's got Spider-Man as well. There's not much else coming up, and I think it's a good time for them to actually pull back a little bit and think, okay, let's look at what people like and what they don't like and correct it. And I think Fantastic Four, could be the beginning of the correction. But you also have to remember they have been in charge of, the cornerstone of Hollywood for 25 years now. All the money coming in from Hollywood for the last quarter of a century, a quarter of the time that Hollywood has existed has had Marvel dominance. So maybe it's just time for the baton to be passed over to DC. If anything at all, but DC looks like it's entering a very interesting phase, I think. If Superman works, which I think everything hinges on, really, if Superman makes $800, $900 million or more, then DC could be the new Marvel.
Off and running. Don't do the thing that the DCEU did, where you go just right to a Batman, Superman, Justice League. You need to do these origins.
Yeah, I think they're going to be smarter about it this time, I think James has this 10-year plan, so he's not going to rush it. I mean, I've been in meetings like that, where people are like, we need to make the money fast, like Avengers has made $2 billion, we need to get ours out there now. We can't wait 5 years. So you can understand it, because the guys who run studios, there's a pretty high turnover of their jobs, and they're like, no, let's make the money now. Let's not plan it for 7 years down the line. Let's make this right now. But I think they've been quite clever about it. You've got Superman, Supergirl. The next Superman movie, I think, will be Superman and Batman, I suspect. James has hinted at that quite heavily. And they're just slowly building up all the other characters across the DC universe. So when Justice League happens, it's going to feel like Avengers, and that a bunch of very successful franchises are going to come together into a mega franchise, whereas the Justice League that we got a few years back, it felt very half-assed, in terms of nobody liked Ezra Miller's Flash, everybody hated him, So the idea that wasn't a plus, having him in your Justice League team, you've got to build up these things so they deserve to join the Justice League when they eventually get there.
So I've been kind of creeping on your social media to see what you've been talking about lately, and somebody asked, what are the 10 out of 10 DC movies that have existed? And I saw your list. There's some good stuff in there. Yeah. You left off Batman 1989 and The Dark Knight. I'm not sure if I put Batman 1989 in as a 10 out of 10. Put Batman 1966.
Oh, perfect Batman movie. 1989.
Where's 1989? That's a huge moment of my childhood.
I love that movie, but it's when you watch it now, I remember going to see that, right? I was 19 when that came out, and I went with 3 of my friends who were comic book guys, and one of them had their girlfriends, and the girlfriends said to me, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And it was just before the movie was starting, and my leg was actually shaking. Right? And I said, "Oh my God, it's shaking involuntarily. I'm so excited, And I loved it so much. I went back to see it again next day. And then when I had some money again the following week, I went again. I saw it 4 times in the cinema inside 2 weeks. I mean, I loved the movie, but I just don't know if it stands up. Like, if you think 10 out of 10 is like The Godfather, Goodfellas, Jaws, that's a 10 out of 10, And I just don't know if Batman 89, although it's got loads of stuff I love in it, like Michael Keaton, the greatest Batman ever, I don't know if it's a 10 out of 10 movie,
Batman. The Legion of Super Pets is 10 out of 10.
I love Legion of Super Pets. I think it's
a good movie.
And I think I couldn't pick a flaw in it. I couldn't pick a flaw in Legion of Super Pets. Shazam, I love. I know a lot of people are funny about Shazam.
I like Shazam too. That's my favorite DCE movie, period.
Easily. Zach Levi's so likable. The script's great. Direction's great and everything. It's a really fun movie. I liked it. What was the other one that was? The
Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. I like The Dark Knight a lot, right? Like, I mean, I'm a huge Dave Goyer fan, and there's amazing performances in it, but it's just a bit long, And
there is a 4th act on it that is really weird, where they put that Two-Face stuff on the end. You're like,
the Two-Face thing feels like another movie shoved. Should have ended with the Joker, and then it's a perfect movie, But I don't know what the hell happened there. I don't know if it went through revisions or something. But I watched it again quite recently with my wife and my sister-in-law, and they hadn't seen it. Weirdly, right? For some reason they hadn't seen it, and they watched it, and it felt a little hokey in places. I know that sounds strange, but it just felt a little bit. I don't know. It just wasn't. It wasn't as well put together as Batman Begins, which is a much shorter movie. It's just over 2 hours and really, really tight. Every line in it matters. Beautiful performances, Liam Neeson, Ken Watanabe, and everything, phenomenal movie. And Bruce Wayne felt right in that movie as well. That's sort of Bruce Wayne traveling the world and honing his skills. All that stuff was awesome with the League of Assassins and everything. So I watched that again on the plane about a year ago, and I was blown away. I watched that and Gladiator on the same flight, and I hadn't watched both in years. And I was actually buzzing. I was like, I come off the plane, sort of wanting to fight somebody. I was so pumped up, I'd just seen Gladiator and Batman Begins.
Yeah, so you were talking about the DC movies, and you put on Superman 2 as a perfect movie. Are you talking about the original theatrical cut or the Donner cut?
The Donner cut. It's funny, I talked to Donner about this, and Donner loved the idea of the Donner cut and everything, but one very good point he made was, obviously, it's just what they could lay their hands on. It wouldn't have been the way Donner would have made the movie. It's an approximation of what Donner was planning, but some of the editing wasn't as sharp as Donner would have done. Special effects weren't finished and stuff like that. He was using addition scenes in the middle, So I think I almost see the Donner cut as something you can't compare because it's like a curiosity. It's a cinematic curiosity. Whereas, I think Superman 2, the Lester cut, even as an 11-year-old, when I saw it, I came out of it kind of angry in some levels as well. The slapsticky stuff I hated when I was 11 because I felt it really looked down on the audience a little bit. But there's so much great stuff in it as well. I mean, there's some great scenes in it. Superman the movie is a better movie, but Superman 2 is a fantastic.
I think Superman 2 is better. I think.
Well, it depends on your age. What one did you see first? Did you see Superman 2 or Superman 1 first?
I think it's probably Superman 2. I was born in 78.
See, most people saw. It's funny because anybody who saw Superman 2 first, that's their favorite. Whereas if you saw Superman 1, you've never seen anything like this before.
And Superman think Terrence Stamp was so amazing.
And what was?
Terrence Stamp.
Amazing. I mean, I love them both, but Superman 1's got a grandeur. If you think about it, Superman 1 had probably the greatest living actors in it at the time. You had Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, but also guys, like Terrence Stamp. You had all those amazing British actors that they had in it as well. You've got Glenn Ford. And the whole thing, it starts as a sci-fi movie, then it becomes a Norman Rockwell painting, and then it comes into the modern age, and it becomes, by the end, it's a romance and it's a disaster movie, I mean, this movie's got everything, and it perfectly encapsulates the 20th century. It seems to start in the 30s, grow up through the 50s, and then come into the 70s, To me, there could never be another movie like it. And it was kind of, America was peak America at the time as well. It was in terms of the American brand, living in Scotland, I had an American flag up in my room when I was 8, you know, and like, you know, we all loved America, like Americana, Smokey and the Bandit, Superman, Star Wars. You know, America just seemed like the coolest place in the planet to me. You know, Clint Eastwood doing Every Which Way But Loose and all that. You know, that was all my childhood view of America, and Superman was just riding that wave of just everybody loved America. You know,
there we go. Should we talk about some comic books?
Yes, let's get some comics going.
So you had a recent Miller Time Retailers Summit. You had Phil Boyle from Coliseum of Comics and John Robinson from Graham Crackers back to have another conversation. And, you know, just 18 months earlier, Phil Boyle was not exactly high on the outlook, the long-term outlook of comic books. Yeah. And he's done like a 180, it appears, all on the back of the DC Absolute Universe.
Who would have guessed in a million years DC would be the guys to ride in and save the day, but they have.
I didn't think it was possible. I'm not even sure that it is possible long-term for DC to be the market leader and to rise everybody up, you know, for a 10 or 15-year period. But it's pretty amazing how quickly this has happened.
Well, if you think about it, in 1937, there was one superhero, the Crimson Avengers. And then in 1938, Superman appeared. 1939, Batman appears. Then you get Wonder Woman, Shazam, Green Lantern, all these things. And then suddenly the dominant thing within 3 years in the comic book industry, very quickly, is superheroes. And all the crime comics and all these things that had been popular before, mystery comics, they were all dead in the water by comparison.
Westerns.
Yeah, Westerns, you know. And they still existed, but superheroes became the alpha genre. And it was completely unexpected. And sometimes that's the way it goes. Like, who could have seen manga coming in and completely blowing away the Western world's comic book scene, including Europe, where comics are revered, you know? Manga just came in and swept through the shelves of Europe and swept through the shelves of the US overnight. You know, I mean, it all happened around about the time of COVID. But I couldn't believe it. Like, it was one visit to the comic shop, it looked one way. Next visit to the comic shop, it looked completely different. And this is just the way it goes. Sometimes, you know, you have to remember DC was the leader of the pack as well in the 60s. Like, Marvel was the coolest company, but DC was the biggest company. It was a bigger deal for Spider-Man to get to cross over with Superman than Superman to cross over with Spider-Man in 1976. So in our lifetimes, we think of the dominant Marvel. You know, like Marvel since the 80s has absolutely ruled the direct market. But, you know, they've dropped the ball a little bit, you know, like at Marvel movies, and the comics are slightly under the control of Disney. You know, it feels it's difficult for them. But DC having a coordinated attack, as they seem to have, with a great line of comics at the same time as their great line of movies and television shows, all coming together and working in tandem with one another, that could flip the script, you know. And all you I mean, we talked about this before, and I said this to Phil. All you need for a healthy comics industry is great comics. That's what it's as simple as that. You don't need any marketing tricks, because see, having children, you know this. If your kids want something, you'll find it. You go out and you try and find it. You look online, you drive for miles, you try and get this thing your kid wants. So comics aren't that hard to find, you know. It's just they have to be worth finding. And I think we're getting back to that place where they're worth finding again.
Yeah, there's definitely been an uptick. And, you know, I started talking about this with DC, you know, probably 6 months into 2024. It's like, hey,
yeah,
DC's kind of been down. Marvel's still down, but DC's kind of coming up. Green Lantern's gotten good. You know, we've got some really interesting things happening on Superman at that time. And now we've got Batman and Robin have kind of come up. The New Gods is pretty cool under Ram V now.
Great.
And now you've got this absolute universe that's really just poured gasoline, I guess, on everything.
I think DC are they've gone from one good comic a month to about 15 plus good comics a month, which I can't believe, you know. I look in the catalog and I'm shocked. And like I say, I think this has been DC's worst creative periods ever. You know, the last decade last 5 years in particular, you know, it's just, I felt no connection with it in any way, you know, and overnight. And even outside of the comics, they've also done some really clever things like the compact comics. Genius move, you know, genius move. And those, I talk to retailers all the time, and I'm astonished that they just continuously sell. You know, they can't keep them in the shops.
Did you know Marvel has a version of that?
Phil was saying this the other day, but it's called
like the Premier Edition. You have no idea that's what it is.
So what's the problem with it? Is it too expensive, or why is it?
It's called Premier Edition instead of Marvel Compact Comics. It tells you exactly what it is. Plus, it's just a little bit bigger than manga.
Oh, well,
and it's more expensive too.
Exactly the same size.
I have no idea. But they've made a competitor, but they made a worse competitor, and DC are blowing them out there too.
Marvel's got a lot of good stuff they could be putting in there. Imagine, Daredevil Born Again and Walt Simonson's Thor and everything, So, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man,
Civil War is going to be put out in that Premier Edition.
Yeah, I can't believe they haven't done the manga size. That's the whole point of this, because my children have been brainwashed, growing up with me, obviously. So they read 1950s comics, right? So they're comfortable with American comics, but their friends will not pick up anything that isn't manga size. That's why DC
That's the preferred format of 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they could do some smart things. I think, just starting out with like Batman 1 in that compact comic and just going on, and sussing out the history of Batman or whatever, rather than just jumping around and doing the best stories. I think long term would it be even more beneficial.
Well, it's funny, when I was a kid, I used to see the Golden Age comics, which were very occasionally reprinted in some giant format or whatever. I saw it as like, these things are so valuable I could never own them, I used to think as a kid. But I'm getting to read this. It's like seeing a book of the Bible that you've never seen before. It's like, it feels sacred, like Bob Kane or Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, it felt sacred to see those early pages, didn't it? And I can't believe they don't make more of all that stuff, because they've got the most amazing back catalogue.
Absolutely. Did you see Dan Jurgens is doing like a Superman Treasury edition this year?
Oh, no. What's that? What is it?
It's the, the oversized Treasury edition, like magazine size original story.
Oh, right. So it's not his Death of Superman or something. No, it's
it's brand new Dan Jurgens on Superman. I was like, that's really cool.
That's cool. Dan Jurgens
done Treasury edition in a while.
And is he writing and drawing it? Yeah.
I think he's just writing. I think there is another artist. I can't remember exactly who it was though. Right. But he might be doing the art as well.
Is it going to be sold in newsstands or something? What's the reason?
I think it's going to just be in comic shops, as far as I know. But I think that's what comics really need. Like the next evolution. Yeah, build it up. Throw a little bit of gasoline on it, get some heat there, and then there's got to be a next evolution in distribution. And I think digital has to do a lot with it, but also just getting into normie spaces.
Well, I think I was talking to Perch about this the other day, and here's my thought. This is controversial, right? Which is that our distribution now is better than it's ever been in history. And I'll tell you why. Because there's specialist stores all over the Western world, right? So nobody's really that far. Vast population centers, like the big cities, all have multiple specialist stores, which people can find pretty quickly. But outside of that, we have Amazon, which can deliver anything you want. I mean, there's online comic retailers, but if you're a guy that's just got a phone and you're a casual reader, you can literally buy it and have a comic brought to your door. You can have the complete works of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing at your door tomorrow. Amazon could literally knock your door and hand it into the house. I mean, in terms of distribution, that's incredible. Then you've got digital, which has never really been done properly here, but when that cracks in the West, that's going to be gigantic. They just have to fix the way it's sold. The price point was ridiculous before, so we still have traditional comic stores, which is a big thing. The trouble with newsstands, which we all sentimentalize, is that back in those days, DC and Marvel had about 35, 40 books coming out between them. So your local grocery store could have one copy of each one of those books. But imagine the industry went down to 40 books. And that's what they'd have to do to get these out in newsstands. Plus, you would also never get Saga, you would never get Walking Dead. They wouldn't have those monthly newsstand things like that. You wouldn't have miniseries. You wouldn't have had Kick-Ass. You wouldn't have had Kingsman or any of the stuff I do. So I think the trouble people hate to hear this, but I think the trouble has been quality. Well,
I think there's, you mentioned the numbers. Between Marvel and DC, they put out about 130 books in a month.
It's insane.
80 for Marvel, 50 for DC.
Yeah.
That's way too many.
Yeah. Better to 20 books each, 20, 25 books each. So it's kind of affordable that you could buy the whole line every month, And I think you would do multiple numbers if you trimmed the line down to that, because they're throwing so much at the wall in the hope of trying to generate more gross revenue. But I think if you imagine you'd one Superman book and one Batman book and one Spider-Man book, they would sell multiples of what they're selling now.
Well, and imagine if the editor only had to worry about 2 or 3 books rather than 10 books.
Yeah.
The oversight and the ability to cross communicate what the story is going to be. How could we impact over here when Civil War happens?
Yeah.
Because remember when you were there when Civil War happens, that literally affects everything.
Oh, it was a nightmare. Yeah, right.
For like 15 months.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, maybe it's not quite 15 months because Civil War ends up being, 7 issues?
Yeah, but I think we were a bit late with some of them. Steve's a really meticulous artist, so I think it ran for about 10, 11 months or something.
Yeah, but it ends up affecting everything, not only while Civil War is happening, but for the next 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's the exciting part, right? The after effect. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've never seen Captain America like this. He's dead.
Joe did a very clever thing in Joe Quesada when he took over Marvel. He said, if it's a bit like the Marvel movies and TV shows, he said he felt the characters were all meeting each other so much in the year 2000 that it wasn't special when they met each other. He said, I want everybody to just focus. Spider-Man just does Spider-Man. Fantastic Four just does Fantastic Four villains and so on. We don't need to see these guys meet, and we're not going to have an intercompany crossover. And I think Brian Bendis did Secret Wars was the first crossover they did in years, and then Civil War was the second one. And what Joe created through scarcity was event status again, which was very clever. I think he did a really great job of that, and people went nuts for it, because when you haven't had something for a few years, it's very exciting to have it back.
So you said you're going to your cinema weekly now, you're going to your comic shop weekly. What are the best books out there? What are you picking up?
Like I say, shocked to say DC, after they were asleep for so long, but they're doing a great job, I have to say. I don't really know the guys over there, so they all come in. I worked at DC in my 20s, so I'm not saying this out of any loyalty or anything, because like I say, there's a weird 2 or 3 years in particular of DC books, but my God, so good. So I'm loving Martian Manhunter's great, Aquaman, The Flash is a good book, Cy Spurrier's book. The Superman titles have actually been really good. Batman slightly tapered off a little bit. Batman, for about 25 years, was very consistently good. Batman was the one you could always rely on. I don't know if it's just oversaturation or something, but Batman seems to have slightly gone off the boil as everything else is blown up. There's some good stuff in there. It's of a standard, but it's not what it was, when you had Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo doing it and so on. What else is good? Tom King's Wonder Woman's a good book. Tons of stuff, But I think in the more independent scene, I'm loving Conan is great. I'm going to check out Flash Gordon because everybody tells me it's fantastic. Over at Marvel, I'm liking Ultimate Spider-Man. What else have I been checking out at Marvel?
Did you get to read Aliens versus Avengers?
I haven't seen it in my store. I don't know if it's sold out, but I haven't seen it. But I love both creators. Like Essa Dribbick's a great artist as well, So the idea of him doing a big crossover book, yes, please, It's funny. There's some things that I don't like crossing over with Marvel, like the Marvel Godzilla stuff. I'm kind of like, this feels a bit weird. I don't know. It doesn't feel authentic. Is the Aliens one good? Yeah,
it was shockingly good. It was easily the best book they put out in the last year or so. And Marvel's a little weird because they have their own version of Xenomorphs,
right?
With the X-Men characters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Hickman absolutely made it work. Like, it's weird, but it's really, really good. Besides, Riddick is awesome.
About 18 months ago, maybe a little more now, maybe 20 months ago, I was saying, like, what we really need back in comics is so obvious is big names on the big characters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. Joe Quesada said this with Marvel Knights. He said, just when he started it, he said, like, I'll draw it, I'll get Kevin Smith to write it, and we'll do a great Daredevil. And it's so simple, like, you just get great people on it, and it's great. And I feel as if that's happening again, like, to have Hickman back at Marvel, awesome. It's great. To have Jason Aaron doing Superman, to have Scott Snyder back doing absolute Batman and everything. I feel as if it's just common sense, isn't it? You put good prose on something and it works.
So you're feeling the tide turning in, like, culture, not only in comic books but in entertainment, where, hey, let's start putting a focus on big bombastic stories that are going to be lots of eyes in, instead of being so weirdly niche. It felt like everything was just trying to compartmentalize itself off from the mainstream audience.
Yes, yeah, it did. I think I did feel for a while, I know this is a weird thing to say, but I did feel for a while that the people who were doing the books weren't loving doing them as well. You know, I know it was just a weird observation that I had, and that I couldn't get excited because I felt a lot of people weren't excited who were working on the books, you know. Maybe the Hollywood thing kind of created that problem where it just seemed to be a stepping stone for people to work in Hollywood. And I've kind of done the other thing where I work in Hollywood and I dip in as a hobby to work in comics. And I love it because I really enjoy doing it. But I feel they're being done by people who are really enthusiastic about it. Again, like every day when I switch on my computer, I cannot wait to see the emails from last night. I can't wait to see a page of artwork coming in from, you know, I'm doing Nemesis, which is starting in August with Matteo Scalera. I got some pages of that in today. And I'm like, what a perfect start to my day. Before I even go down and make a cup of tea, you know, and get the kids up for school with my wife, I'm getting some Matteo Scalera pages coming in, you know, and some emails about other things we're working on. And it's just the best job in the world. And I feel as if I've always felt really lucky to be working in comics. Like, I wanted to do this when I was 4 or 5. And I'm actually getting to do that. I mean, that's like being an astronaut, isn't it? You know, that's like something you dream of being when you're a kid, and actually getting to do it is amazing. It's a privilege. And I feel as if the guys who are working in comics, again, it's their life dream. It's the people who really love doing it, which is contagious. And I think that's what the 80s had as well, you know, under Jim Shooter. You know, I think Frank Miller, all he ever wanted to be was a writer and an artist. You know, Walt Simonson, that's who he was. John Byrne, he was never going to be anything else. It's like he loved Marvel Comics, couldn't wait to get up every day and do this stuff. So I feel as if you've got to bring your passion to the work, or readers won't be passionate about it.
I'm kind of starting to feel like maybe the culture war and all that stuff is starting to end, and I think that's certainly helping a lot with it.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I feel as if, you know, my feeling with the culture war was as an overseas psyop, you know? Like, I feel the whole thing was just a way of getting, you know, to disrupt other economies. I don't know what country was doing it, but it was just so stupid. It was just so stupid, you know? But I definitely feel that it was just arguing for the sake of arguing. You know, it was people who would otherwise all go on with each other, all fighting with each other. And it didn't do any industry any good. No industry did well out of all this, you know? You know, just treat people well, try and be nice to everybody. You know, it's that the end. Just now go and make some good comics.
Well, speaking of making good comics, we do have Psychic Sam right now on Kickstarter. 1 week left. You got any big announcements or big things people should be looking out for in the last week? I know some people like to throw some special things that had been unannounced there at the end.
We were unaware of that, actually. We only found out because we're such newbies with Kickstarters, you know. So we threw in a stretch goal, which is quite a fun one, which is there's going to be if it hits $100,000, there's going to be a free digital copy of the second volume's first 10 pages or 9 pages, given out to everybody, regardless of what tier it was on, everybody who backed it. And that will all be sent out in an email once you've got issue 1. So that's exciting, you know, because we're really excited about the story. We love it. So I don't think inside the next week, we'll announce the director because we have to get his deal finished and everything with the studio. And then obviously the actor will be announced after that. But by the time volume 2, we should hopefully be doing a campaign for that around about September. And we'll be able to announce certainly the director, possibly the actor then as well, that'll be quite an exciting news announcement. We'll probably hold it back until the launch of the second one so that we can hit Hollywood Reporter and all that all on the same day.
Very, very cool. I'm making a bold prediction. People are going to be able to collect on that stretch goal. I think 100,000 is definitely going to happen. And I think Superman does $160 million in the U.S. opening weekend and $400 million worldwide.
What do you think's the total worldwide gross overall?
400 million. Oh,
no.
The whole thing, I think it goes over $1 billion, but I think 400 million opening weekend.
I think you're right. I feel very bullish about Superman. Everybody's going back to the cinema again. We're seeing it with Lilo and Stitch. We're seeing it Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft I could have loved again vicariously through my kids, but when Minecraft's making 900 million, you know, like I think Superman's going to do well. I think it's...
I put on the trailer for the wife and kids.
Yeah.
They all immediately stopped what they were doing. They watched it through the end, and they all said that they wanted to see it.
Yeah, and crypto's a big part of that for my family. My family are going nuts for crypto. We're getting a new dog, and my youngest daughter wants to call it Crypto, which is kind of. I mean, I'm going to be the guy shouting in the park, Crypto. You know, it's going to be weird. You know, but she's getting to name this dog, and right now that's going to be Crypto.
It makes sense. It fits in. You got the cape, you've got the cat, and now you have crypto.
Exactly. Did you see the cat, the footage that went up a couple of days ago from one of the overseas premieres? And it's a red carpet and it's steps leading up with the big Superman symbol and everything. And because the cameras have been sitting there since 10 a.m., the cameras recorded everything going on. And this little white cat comes out of nowhere and stops on the step and takes a dump on the red carpet. Did you see this? I'll send you a link. It's the maddest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, cats don't ever do the toilet.
They're the worst people in the world.
It's like Lex Luthor's cat or something, you know? And what's amazing is it's not engineered. It's one of the few things Warner Brothers have not done for this campaign, you know? But like, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And this cat, I mean, I've never seen a cat take a dump in my life. Cats always disappear behind trees and you never see it, you know? But like, takes a dump right in the middle of the Superman red carpet.
Beautiful. Well, I do want to say thank you so much to Mark, and best of luck on Psychic Sam and everything else that you got cooking up.
Thanks very much. Listen, really good talking to you, and I'll speak to you in the private messages probably in 10 minutes. Yeah.